It was a Tuesday night, quiet, except for the sound of the dishwasher humming. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through emails from work, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "I can't stop thinking about last night. You said you'd tell her soon. Please don't make me wait forever." For a moment I froze. My fingers went numb, the kind of stillness that only happens when your mind refuses to catch up with what your eyes are reading. I stared at the message again, half hoping I'd misread it. But no, the words were crystal clear. I looked over at the man I'd shared a bed with for 16 years. Ryan was at the dining table, typing on his laptop, sipping from the same coffee mug I'd bought him for Father's Day. He looked calm, focused, ordinary. I wanted to ask, to stand up, hold my phone in his face, and demand an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I replied, "Who is this?" A few seconds later, my screen lit up again. "Haley, don't be mean. You know it's me." My throat went dry. Haley. The name meant nothing to me, yet it felt like a knife pressed against the edge of my ribs. I watched him for a long moment, the rise and fall of his shoulders, the faint sound of his typing. 16 years, a mortgage, 2 kids, shared memories like pictures on the fridge. Then, like a fog clearing, something sharp clicked in my chest. If this woman thought she was texting him, then maybe I could use that. Maybe it was time to see how far this rabbit hole went. I typed back, "You're right. We need to talk. How about dinner tomorrow? Our usual place?" Her response came almost instantly. "Finally. 7 p.m.? Perfect," I replied. Ryan didn't even look up from his laptop as I smiled faintly to myself. He had no idea. Tomorrow, I thought, would be unforgettable. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, like nothing had changed. Ryan was already dressed, pouring coffee, scrolling through his phone. The sight of him, so normal, so familiar, made my stomach twist. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," I answered, trying to sound casual as I packed the kids' lunches. I watched him slip on his wedding ring, the same ring that had been on his hand the night he vowed to love me forever. The irony made my chest tighten. He kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. The scent of his cologne lingered, sharp and expensive, a smell I used to love. This time it burned. As soon as the door closed, I grabbed my phone and opened the message thread with Haley. "Can't wait to see you tonight," she'd written earlier that morning, followed by a heart emoji. I almost laughed. She thought she'd be meeting him, not me. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, planning every detail. The restaurant would have to be somewhere quiet but visible, a place where I could watch without being seen. I thought of La Vigne, the French bistro where Ryan and I celebrated his last promotion. It was upscale, intimate, and more importantly, required reservations. I called, using his name for the booking. "Dinner for 2 at 7, I said, smiling faintly into the phone. All day, I kept my cool. At work, I answered emails, smiled at colleagues, even complimented the new intern on her shoes. Inside, though, a storm was building, steady and controlled, like the calm before a well-planned detonation. By evening, I was ready. I put on a black dress. Nothing flashy, just elegant enough to feel powerful. My hair was smooth, my lipstick a confident red. At 6:45, I arrived at La Vigne and asked for a quiet corner near the window. From there, I could see everything. At 7:02, she walked in. Haley was younger than I expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Pretty in that polished Instagram way. She wore a fitted cream blouse, hair loose and shiny, eyes darting toward the door like a nervous teenager waiting for a date. I felt the weight of betrayal again. But this time, it didn't crush me. It steadied me. She sat, ordered wine, checked her phone. At 7:10, Ryan's name appeared on my screen. "Hey, I'm stuck at work. Might be late." Of course he was. So I replied, pretending to be her. "That's okay. I'll wait." Then I watched him show up anyway 10 minutes later, looking rushed but expectant. He scanned the restaurant. His eyes landed on her. And for the first time, I saw his real face. Surprise, guilt, recognition, all flash in one heartbeat. I stood, calm and invisible, and walked right past them toward the exit. He didn't even notice me, but she did. Her eyes widened as she realized who I was, and I smiled. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of La Vigne. My pulse was steady now, the kind of calm that comes after a decision you can't take back. Behind me, through the glass, I could see them, Ryan sitting stiffly across from Haley, both wearing confusion like badly fitted masks. I didn't go far. I walked to the coffee shop across the street, ordered a latte I didn't plan to drink, and settled by the window with a perfect view of their table. From there, I could watch everything. Haley looked panicked. She kept glancing at the door, then at Ryan, probably realizing how badly she'd been played. Ryan's face told its own story, his lips tight, eyes darting, a man trapped between two lives. I'd expected to feel fury watching them, or heartbreak. But instead, what came was something quieter. Relief, maybe. For months, I'd felt something was off. Missed calls, late nights, new cologne. But I'd blamed myself for being paranoid. Now the truth sat under that golden restaurant light, in two human forms fumbling with excuses. I sipped my latte and let them squirm. About 20 minutes later, Ryan pulled out his phone. My phone buzzed instantly. Ryan: "Hey, weird question. Are you at La Vigne?" I didn't answer. I just smiled and took another sip. A few minutes passed. Another text came through. Ryan: "I think something's wrong. Can we talk when I get home?" Home. The word felt empty now. I watched him stand up, his chair scraping loudly. He gestured toward Haley, clearly frustrated. She looked like she was trying not to cry. Good. Let them both feel the sting of uncertainty for once. When they finally left the restaurant, I waited until their silhouettes disappeared around the corner before walking back to my car. My hands didn't shake when I turned the key. My heart didn't race. All I could think about was how much of myself I'd poured into a man who'd been living a double life, and how strange it felt to finally stop defending him. As I pulled into our driveway, an hour later, his car was already there. The lights in the living room were on. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and walked inside. Ryan was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, guilt written all over him. He looked up, eyes desperate. "Laura, can we talk about what happened?" I shut the door behind me softly and met his gaze. "Oh, we'll talk," I said. "But not tonight. Not yet." Tonight I wanted him to sit in the silence he'd created. The house felt heavier than usual that night, like every wall was listening. I could hear the faint tick of the clock in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the uneven rhythm of Ryan's breathing as he waited for me to speak. He stood when I walked in, his voice shaky. "Laura, please, let me explain." I took off my coat slowly, hung it on the hook by the door, and set my purse on the counter. My movements were deliberate, almost mechanical. I wasn't ready to hear him. Not yet. "Explain what?" I asked quietly, keeping my eyes on the floor. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "That woman, Haley, she's someone from work. It was stupid, I swear it's over." The way he said her name made my skin crawl. Haley, as if she were just some mild inconvenience, not a symptom of everything that had died between us. I looked up at him. "You've been lying to me for how long?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just silence. And that silence told me more than any confession ever could. I walked past him into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, the coldness grounding me. My hands were steady, my voice calm. "You know what's funny, Ryan? She texted me, by mistake." He froze. His eyes widened. What?" I turned to face him, holding his gaze. "Yeah, she thought she was texting you. That's how I found out. And that's how I booked your little dinner tonight." His face went pale. "You? What do you mean you booked?" "I made the reservation," I said, my tone steady. "Under your name. I thought it was time you both met. Properly." He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Jesus, Laura. For a moment I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered the nights I'd waited for him to come home. The excuses. The smell of someone else's perfume on his jacket. I set my glass down, the sound sharp against the counter. "You made your choices, Ryan. I just decided to make you look at them." He looked up, eyes wet, searching for something. Remorse, forgiveness, maybe the woman I used to be, but she wasn't there anymore. I don't want to fight, he whispered. Good, I said, walking toward the hallway. Because I'm done fighting for you. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, my body trembling. Not from weakness, but release. For the first time in years, I slept soundly. When I woke up, the house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, warm and calm as if mocking me. I half expected Ryan to be gone. A suitcase missing from the closet, a note left on the kitchen counter. But when I walked downstairs, he was there, sitting at the table. Same coffee mug, same robe, different eyes. He looked up when he heard me. Morning, he said softly, like we were just picking up a normal day. I poured myself coffee, not answering. The scent filled the room. Bitter, familiar, grounding. Finally, I spoke. You stayed. I didn't want to leave things like that, he said. I know I messed up. I don't want to lose our family. I let the words hang between us. Our family. He said it like it was something he still had control over. The kids were still asleep upstairs, thank God. They didn't need to see this version of us. I sat across from him. Ryan, do you even understand what last night did to me? He shook his head, his voice breaking. I swear it wasn't serious. It was just a mistake. That word again. Mistake. He said it like he'd misplaced his keys, not my trust. I leaned forward. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. You built a lie. You planned dinners, texted her, met her after work. That's not a mistake, Ryan, that's a choice. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. For a moment I studied him, the lines on his forehead, the gray at his temples. I remembered the man who once made me laugh until I cried, who stayed up all night with our newborn, who promised we'd always tell each other the truth. I wanted to hate him, but mostly I just felt empty. He whispered, "What do you want me to do?" I took a slow breath. "I want you to move out, for now." He looked stunned. "Laura, please." "Don't," I said firmly. "You need to think about what you've done, and I need space to remember who I am without you." He didn't argue, just nodded, eyes glistening, and went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, zippers, the dull thud of shoes hitting the floor. When the front door finally closed behind him, I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I finally felt free. The first night without him was strange. The house sounded different, emptier but somehow calmer. The air felt lighter. The silence no longer tense but peaceful. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, legs tucked under me, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan. There were no footsteps pacing upstairs, no phone lighting up at midnight, just me, for the first time in years. That felt like enough. I thought about how many little things I'd ignored, the late meetings, the excuses, the way he'd turned his phone face down on the table. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. I'd trusted him because that's what wives do. But trust, I realize now, shouldn't feel like gaslighting yourself into blindness. The kids were staying at my sister's for the weekend, which gave me space to breathe. I spent the next morning cleaning out the house, not angrily, just deliberately. Every photo, every piece of clutter that didn't belong anymore, went into a box. Halfway through, I found a framed picture from our anniversary in San Diego. Ryan had his arm around me, the ocean behind us. I remembered how I'd believed him then when he said we were stronger than ever. I held the photo for a moment, then placed it face down in the box. By afternoon, my best friend, Nicole, dropped by with takeout and that look she gets when she knows I'm trying to act fine. "So," she said, setting the bags down, "how are you holding up, really?" I gave a short laugh, like someone who just found out her marriage had an expiration date she didn't see coming. She smiled softly. "Then I'd say you're handling it better than most." We ate noodles and drank cheap wine straight from the bottle, talking about everything except him. The kids, work, movies, normal things. It felt good to hear my own laugh again, even if it cracked a little at the edges. Later that night, after she left, I stood at the window watching the streetlights flicker against the pavement. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably alone, too, rehearsing apologies that didn't matter anymore. And as strange as it sounded, I didn't wish him pain. I just wished myself peace. I turned off the lights, went upstairs, and climbed into bed. The sheets were cool against my skin, the other side empty but not lonely. For the first time in a long time, I slept without dreams, just silence, and it was beautiful. 2 weeks later, the rhythm of my life had changed. Morning coffee alone, music while making breakfast, long walks after work with no one asking where I was going or when I'd be back. Peace had a sound now, the rustle of trees, the hum of the dishwasher, my own breathing. So when Ryan's number flashed on my phone one Friday evening, my stomach tightened, but not from fear, from recognition, a past I'd already begun to leave behind. I let it ring out the first time. The second time, I answered. "Hi," I said simply. He hesitated. "Laura, I've been thinking about everything. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to apologize again. Properly." His voice was tired, not manipulative, not pleading, just heavy. I could picture him sitting in that rented apartment downtown, surrounded by silence he didn't know how to live with. "I believe you're sorry," I said, "but sorry doesn't rebuild what you burned." There was a long pause. "I know. I've started therapy, trying to figure out why I did it. I just missed the life we had." I took a deep breath, watching the sunset bleed orange across the neighborhood roofs. "The life we had doesn't exist anymore, Ryan, but I'm not angry. Not anymore." He was quiet. "Would you ever want to talk? In person?" Part of me wanted to say no, but another part, the part that still believed in closure, said yes. "Maybe," I said, "but not for us. For me." That weekend, we met at a small cafe near the park. It was where we used to take the kids for hot chocolate after soccer games. He looked thinner, older somehow, like life had finally caught up to him. We talked, not like lovers or even like enemies, like two people who once loved each other fiercely and then let that love rot in silence. He didn't ask for forgiveness this time. He just listened, and for that, I was grateful. When we stood to leave, he reached for my hand, but I stepped back gently. "You don't get to touch me yet," I said softly. "Maybe someday you'll earn that kind of grace again, but not today." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and walked away. I watched him go, the wind catching his coat, carrying him back into a life I no longer belonged to. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken watching him leave. I felt light. As I walked back to my car, I caught my reflection in a shop window. Different woman, same face. Stronger, steadier, whole. Spring came early that year. The air smelled of rain and new grass, and the cherry trees lining the street bloomed like soft explosions of pink. I walked beneath them one morning, coffee in hand, realizing it had been 3 months since Ryan moved out. 3 months since I'd stopped waiting for someone who was never coming home. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. They still saw their dad on weekends, and they came back with stories. He was trying, cooking dinners, reading bedtime books. I was glad for that. He was learning how to be a father again, even if he'd failed as a husband. As for me, I'd started to live differently. On purpose. I signed up for a pottery class, the kind I'd always said I was too busy for. I ran in the mornings. I laughed more, louder, without worrying about who was listening. There was something deeply liberating about building a life from the ashes of what you once thought was permanent. One evening, I stayed late at work, finishing up a project. When I finally left the office, the city lights shimmered against the wet pavement. I stopped by a small wine bar near my apartment, a cozy place with jazz playing softly and strangers talking in low tones. That's where I met Ethan. He wasn't anything like Ryan. His presence was quiet, unassuming. He didn't fill the silence. He respected it. We talked about books, travel, the best places to get pie in New England. It wasn't a spark. It was a slow warmth, like sunlight creeping through the blinds on a lazy morning. When I got home that night, I didn't overthink it. I just smiled, because I realized something. I didn't need love to feel whole, but maybe someday I could let it in again. Weeks passed and the house no longer felt empty. It felt mine. Every choice, every inch of space, every moment, mine. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found one of Ryan's old shirts tucked behind a drawer. I held it for a second, the fabric soft and faintly familiar, then placed it in the donation box without hesitation. That part of my life was over. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, my daughter whispered, "Mom, you seem happier." I brushed her hair back and smiled. That's because I am. Later, I stood on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset melt into gold and lavender. The wind was cool, carrying the smell of blooming magnolias. I thought about the woman I was before that text message, the one who trusted too easily, who doubted her instincts, who shrank to keep the peace. She was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, braver, freer, and for the first time in years, I didn't need anyone to meet me for dinner, because I'd finally learned to meet myself.